infinite activity of the Great White Brotherhood in its untold manifestations upon the planetary body are revealed to the few and those who can outreach toward the heart of God in a correct manner so as to become imbued with the destiny of the spiritual creation of life, in contradistinction to the mortal hopes and aspirations of men in the modes of the passing times and of the current hour. Men must understand the duality of their own selves, that the seeming incongruity of passing events may take a more reasonable shape in their consciousness insofar as understanding of our purposes and the purposes of the Most High God go. Unfortunately, down through the tides of time, man has continually in the outer mode of self, which you deem and call mortal, continued to cast stones of stumbling not only in the pathway of the elect, but in the pathway of all mankind. For when the pool of mortal relationship or immortal relationship is disturbed, if it were possible, by the casting of mortal stones into the pool of human thought and feeling, it cannot produce the perfection of the eternal sphere. My reason for drawing this analogy, referencing both mortality and immortality, is that the selfless beings connected with our brotherhood, who work so closely with the evolutions of earth, do themselves take of their immortal energies and bring them into contact with mortal thought and feeling through human ideation, through contact with individuals. You then must recognize, precious one, how that the masters themselves, in their contact with mankind in a lesser than perfect manifestation, do suffer the lowering of the vibratory action of the thrust for the immortal purpose which they make into the sphere of mankind's realm. This, of course, is but a temporary thing, and while it has no power to alter the structure of the ascendant pattern of an ascended being, it can pose problems in comfortability and is not to be desired any more than you would desire to dip your hands into scalding water. I call to your attention then, O mankind of earth, that the sacrifices made by mankind on behalf of the light of God and for the immortal purposes are exceeded by those who have clean escaped from mortal error, and finding themselves in a realm of perfection and pure light, after a series of unhappy events, while persecuted in mortal form for the kingdom of God's sake, do then return to the scene of their emancipation for no other purpose than the freedom of evolutions of a lesser development. May I then call to your attention as an emissary of the Great White Brotherhood that I have been chosen this day to address this heart center and focus of the Summit Lighthouse because of its role in world events, and in order to convey to you in structure the need for certain specific actions on the part of individuals who have offered themselves consecrated to our purpose. Whenever there is formulated a divine intent in man, it must be recognized that the veil of human thought and feeling immediately takes a counterpart of the divine action and ascendant tendency, so that when mankind raises himself up to seek the light, and the light shines full upon his face, the shadow of unqualified, imperfect substance remaining as a residue in his world stands facing the light, and the shadow is cast behind him. The shadow cast behind him must of necessity be transmuted, for when the transmutation is accomplished, it will come to pass that there is no shadow cast before or no shadow cast behind. But until such an event occurs, men must recognize the action of the dweller on the threshold of mortal past events, which they call karma and the web of circumstance, and with which we cope. The planetary body itself does have such an action, and there is the unfortunate web of circumstance which is linked to the planetary body in its own sacrifices through nature and through the being of the elements to take on mortal imperfection, which they have from time to time cast off in the role of necessity, and which at the present moment is in some peril and yet is held in check by the mercy of the great law for a time, which we question and which we pray may be extended. Truly, only the few selflessly cognize the divine intent. Men admire from a distance the role of the Christ. They pursue it, they seek it. But when the first prick of the crown rests upon their own brow, they withdraw in the sweat of confusion and seek to find a more comfortable bed of roses where they may recline in some supposed aura of peace, which is not the lot of those dedicated Chelas who choose in their own hearts to outpicture the highest patterns of perfection for mankind. One of the sad yet true elements of the dedicated one is that they are seldom recognized until they have been removed from the stage of life for what they really are, and individuals that are around them seldom recognize the qualities that spur them on to Christ's development and manifestation. I would call to your attention then that those who are dedicated to the great white brotherhood and the realm of our service need seldom expect or will seldom receive that recognition which is due them. However, the few who are able to cognize the aura of truth and spiritual light which manifests in the hearts of those who have chosen to outpicture the elections of God will recognize, will know in part, and understand in part, but only the few who themselves have passed through the necessary travails will truly understand the disciplines and requirements of the hour. Constancy, devotion, and other attributes of deity are names to be mouthed by mankind and to be approved and acclaimed by mankind, but when these roles are brought to the attention of an individual and he is charged with the responsibility of remembering the lines and playing this game of life upon the stage of life, the outpicturing of divine perfection before men, when the audience does not approve or applaud, when he is disconnected apparently from some old sense of reality and mortality, when he finds himself in a never land where the great dawning perfection is not yet plainly visible to his eyes, and the world's treasures, which he has sought long and not attained, stand dimly behind him, he wonders as to whether or not he ought to once again seek and pursue the perfection of the world, which he then begins to feel has some glamour and pull for him. But the world does not have perfection, and mankind in honesty realize this. However, the perfections of the world in a false morality and self-righteousness do sometimes capture men who have once dedicated themselves to God, and finding refuge within the realm of their own self-righteousness, they retreat from the light itself, which casts shadows everywhere where imperfection dwells. For when the glaring light is placed upon the affairs of an individual, so that that individual is clearly revealed, cause, effect, record, and motive, it makes a difference even to the individual himself. Unfortunately, time itself and the necessary explanations which I would like to give do not permit me to clearly unveil all that I would this morning for you. And there are reasons why this is so. After all, precious ones, unless the truth can be cognized by all, it is sometimes useless to more than hint at that which we desire to do, so that the individuals themselves may ferret out that which they are able, and not be troubled by misunderstanding of that which is not yet their attained forte. I come now then to point out to you that there is a specific and very real action involved in the creation of this Summit Lighthouse Heart Center. It has not yet begun to outpicture the destiny which it is intended to do if we can procure the necessary dedication from those individuals who can outwardly make it a success based on the inward laws of the Brotherhood. Be that as it may, I assure you that that which has already been done in the world of form has made its mark upon this age in inviolate light. It can never be taken from the karmic record, that dedication which has already been manifested and has produced a perfection in the world of form that is not recognized or credited to those who stand behind it in the world of form. Unquestionably, there is a great stage managership behind all of this, and due credit must be given to beloved Master Moria L. and to the council at Darjeeling. Due credit must also go to Saint Germain for all that he has done, and due credit must go to numerous and unnumbered angels, devas, builders of form, and carriers of our messages to the farthest flung corners of civilization and the world. Interplanetary emissaries have also been involved. We assure you that the great trackless wilds of the cosmos have also felt the footprints of our emissaries borne to your earth in support of that which is an ageless memory from the very heart of God, of a golden age in divine contemplation, where men's hearts were free from all forms of human viciousness and human darkness and human misconception, when the pure consciousness of the Christ manifested in God's divine plan and without fail in every situation was outpictured by the individual monads who occupy the physical body of the earth. Men then everywhere would in the divine vision expand the golden rule by right action and find it a most useful tool in producing perfection. I regret to tell you that unfortunately very few individuals, even connected with this holy order, have rightly understood all that is our intent. And this, precious ones, is not cause for lament. For if it were not so, that there are vast uncharted areas of the cosmos and of the divine plan yet to be discovered, perhaps the wonder of the search would be less appealing to individuals. But I think that aeons of time ahead, even in the ascended master octaves, will only prove that the ultimate perfection of the system of worlds involving all creation, is a never-ending drama of beauty, happiness, and peace, reflecting the love of God in his great, wondrous desire to create and recreate again and again patterns of involved and intricate perfection which bring untold delight and happiness to all creation when the divine plan is permitted to be fulfilled and the human will is stilled. Now then, precious one, it is not my intent this morning to do other than perform the mission for which I have come. In Paris, there are a certain group of dedicated masters who are currently counteracting much of that which Mr. de Gaulle seeks to do, to unnerve the world and to produce a nationalistic glory for France. There is a great threat in a certain tie between China and France to the United States and to the world plan of peace. Those who seek to bring aid and comfort to the enemy, in this case the forces that would produce darkness and the bane of war and the extension of ignorance in order to procure safety for the rich, provincial, and powerful individuals who have sought to dominate the earth, is not the plan, precious ones, of God. Yet they do, in their ignorance, seek to bring that comfort to the enemy. Now the enemy, precious ones, of mankind is often to be found lurking in psychic darkness. Individuals, fancying that they are their own man, seem to feel that they themselves are able to walk in the world and secure for their own individual identity whatsoever they would. And in seeking the kingdom of heaven, many go forward in the sense of their own self-perfection, as though they would discover gold or go on some great adventure. They do not and cannot seem in some cases to recognize the need to study spiritual law as mankind are wont to study physical law and the laws of science. The involved laws of the Brotherhood have not been properly studied by many of the student body, and individuals have unfortunately neglected spiritual things for material purposes and gain. This is their privilege. No person on this planet has been subjected by Almighty God to any form of domination. But when individuals come into a state of consciousness where they desire to place themselves under the direction of the Great White Brotherhood, they must then function according to the rules of our organization, which is totally dedicated to divine perfection and the achieving of that perfection in the realms of mankind without fail. It has no other purpose except to extend the will of God and the kingdom of God to mankind. We do not function in the plane of bringing to individuals some specific prosperous situation whereby their own outer world and world of sense will suffer some great gain. We are not, however, opposed to the abundant life being bestowed upon all, but we recognize the need to follow the injunction of the Christ, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness. Then we know that the law will be correctly interpreted and not before. We know the difficulties that have been encountered by the ascended masters in welding together a group of devotees here in the heart center. And we assure you that if sympathy were possible from our octave, we would extend it to you in some of the unfortunate incidents that have occurred to you because of the attacks of the psychic and sinister forces against the purposes of our plan. For men do not so much oppose you, blessed ones, outwardly, as they oppose the light and extension of that light into the realm of human shadow. But I wish to make a very important point to you now. Mankind will almost always direct their human venom against the representatives of the light and find some fault or vilification with the individual, because they are not big enough to reach up into the divine octave, and that is correct, precious one, and be able to hold perspective. If they were, they would not find themselves tools of the sinister force at the self-same moment when they mentally aspire to serve God with the fullness of their being and seek divine reward, yet are not ready to offer themselves without reservation upon the altar of life. Now I would like at this moment to say a word about the system that we have operated under for some time. When we first secured the dispensation from the heart of God that permitted another individual in another activity to give forth dictations before hundreds and thousands of people, it was an event of momentous importance to the earth, and mankind were given an opportunity rare in cosmic destiny. I am sure a moment's reflection by any of you will make clear that countless individuals walked into that room where our messenger did bring forth the dictations from on high and scarcely had a moment's concept as to what was taking place. Individuals heard and received the vibratory action thrust through the physical form of their being and through their four lower bodies with intense power, and they did not realize that which had taken place. It was as though an uncertain trumpet had sounded, and they did not know how to respond. And this has occurred continuously. You may wonder then why we have permitted our dictations to go forth to those who were not completely aware of the great opportunities they received through these dictations. Let me tell you, precious ones, that the parable of the 99 should make it plain to you. For the good shepherd did go in search of that one lamb which was lost and neglected the others of the flock. Hence, precious ones, the great unfailing light of God extends itself to mankind again and again, in order to seek that which is lost, and in the hope that some one lamb will respond to the ministrations of the Good Shepherd. The 99, they who are already in the higher octaves of light, who are then, so to speak, neglected because the attention of the Master is directed toward the lost, in no way really suffer. But it is the lost lamb wandering among the rugged mountains and thistles and thorns upon the planet that we are seeking. And when in the multitude there are only a few who respond, we consider it enough. And this has been the thinking of cosmic law. This has been the thinking of the hierarchy. This has been the design to bring from the sons of men, one by one, into divine captivity, the captivity to the law of love, those individuals who would serve our cause and thus enlarge the borders of God's kingdom among men. Precious ones of the unfailing light of God, we have continued to do this, yet we are aware of certain suggestions from Venus and from the hierarchy on Venus that have to do with ancient records of past civilization. And we are aware that some curtailment may be necessary, either on an individual basis, whereby we will be forced to separate individuals from your midst because they are not worthy to receive our dictations until they have performed some necessary ablution to cleanse themselves from certain types of psychic error which find an easy pathway into their consciousness simply because of the bane of neglect in their own world, and the bane of neglect insofar as doing the necessary protection to fend off the psychic forces and disturbing creations that seek to find an inroad into their consciousness. This is an old battle. It is an old battle indeed. But men themselves must recognize the need here and now to secure their own personal salvation. And if they are not willing to do it, God cannot violate his law and raise them into the cosmic peerage without merit, without service, without dedication, without willingness. The example of the Christ is often forgotten upon the occasion when he knelt before them all and washed their feet, and the dust of the road fell from their feet into the water, because the Christ, the Messiah who was to come, the Son of God, chose to humble himself and become obedient even unto death. You then must understand that the sacrifices men have made today are often far short of that which was made by the prophets of old. And yet the grumblings of mankind today, when they are brought into a heart center such as this, is often in excess of that which was brought about in Israel long ago, for which the earth opened and swallowed them. Beloved, Moria has sought to call you together prior to this to speak to you, but because of certain density in human thought and feeling, he elected to pass this to me, for it was felt that the thrust of his tremendous power would unseat the human emotions when he desired only to give balance. And therefore I have been chosen for various reasons which I will not completely define, except to say that I have functioned often in the councils of Paris, and we find that the people of France often have great and unstable emotions, being swayed this way and then that way with ease. Some of this is captured in the wondrous Marseillaise, and they of course did respond to the hymn of the Revolution with ease. Now, however, you have chosen to use it most gloriously to amplify the flame of beloved Paul and the flame of love, which is the intent of God always. There are men and women, however, who, going the wrong way in thought and feeling, seem to amplify the love aspects of God without amplifying the power aspect and the need for correction of the human. I do not care who the individual may be. The human of any individual is of no use to God, for it is a conglomerate mass of psychic creation. In it is to be found numberless hatred and involvements of the human ego. Over the span of the centuries, embodiment after embodiment, individuals have made karma with one another. In a search for self-good, they have neglected the divine gold mine within them. And then they come to the kingdom of God and expect that the content of their world, the psychic strata of their being, the bulk of their mortal substance, is fit to be laid upon the altar of God. It is fit for nothing else, blessed ones, than to be transmuted. And I may as well make that clear to you right now and forever. It is never fit to be used by the kingdom of God. Your blessed Saint Germain has told you the truth of this on occasion after occasion, having declared that in the psychic realm there is nothing of use whatsoever. I reaffirm it. The covenants of God are made with the power of light that is within man. And as man draws more light into his world and more illumination, he becomes more and more harmonious. The idea that in our retreats we do not have the right to use power and authority and dominion through our messengers is a fallacy of human thought. There is no other way that we can in this particular time, and expediently so, bring about the necessary corrections which we know and affirm are the requirements of the hour. In the name of Almighty God, I say, are you a spineless jellyfish that would like to have us pat you with a feather of love, while you yourselves would be no more than a blob of human creation? I think, in honesty, you cannot say aye. I think, in honesty, you must admit that to develop the divine spine, the altar of God, where the transmutation can occur, to gaze upward into the face of Christ and pass the test of life, is the goal. Whether it be achieved now or later, you must begin someplace, sometime, somewhere to do it. And if you seek to have your paltry egos flattered and tickled on every hand, you will not find it in the true retreats of our brotherhood. And I will tell you, if you will involve yourself mentally in the knowledge of St. Teresa and others of the saints of the Catholic Church, you will find that many of them have known how to suffer and endure until the perfection and purity of holy reason, and I say holy reason, was made known to them, and they understood that the law of God was above all human personality, and yet involved man in that great divine incomprehensible personality of God himself. For he has such a personality. But man and even masters are not able to thoroughly comprehend it. But in its comprehension is the expansion of every individual, whether man or master. Thus, we hope today to give you some insight into divine concepts. Our beloved Master Moria has made certain decisions affecting this heart center. And among those decisions, I assure you, are right action for the light. Do not expect to understand these with human reason. Do not, above all, condemn the Master's action. Remember, precious ones, that the passing of opportunity from before any life stream on any occasion is for a purpose, the learning of each individual soul. And opportunity does come again when individuals are ready to receive it. We cannot at this time and in this generation and in this moment of peril afford to have any form of subtle inharmony manifesting in anyone here, nor can we afford to have any form of human intent or motive or purpose served that does not contain the immortal plan. This activity, regardless of any man's opinion, is intended to be the fullness of an activity of light and love. It is intended to embody all that El Moria and the Darjeeling Council call the thrust for the salvation of the earth. The earth, precious ones, itself, as a conglomerate whole, has suffered intently the depredations of mortal men. Unfortunately, precious ones, mankind have continued again and again to go down into the two distinct pitfalls that seem to be the bane of mankind's existence. One is the thrust by mortal men for political and economic power. In this domain fall the businessmen of the world and the would-be dictators of the world. There they aspire to security of position over the affairs of vast numbers of the mankind of earth. The other are those who are the have-nots, For those who aspire to this have some accumulated momentum which cause them to be fitted for their positions, whether we approve of them or not. The have-nots, however, those who are without the necessary momentums to achieve in the outer world, are those individuals who go forth to criticize, to condemn, and to judge mankind. Because, precious ones, in that judgment of others, they seem to find temporary exoneration for themselves. And therefore, the two great thrusts which oppose the Christ manifestation today are the thrusts for materialism and honor and achievement among mankind, and the thrust that mankind make against others, whether it be political figures, entertainment figures, or spiritual figures, in order that they may find excuses for their own lack of achievement. These are the puny individuals of the world who have not found the dedication and constancy to actually do mighty deeds. And in their smallness of being, they create a tremendous karma, which has held them down in the round of littleness for centuries. Their only escape lies in the stilling of the human mouth and the paying of tribute to God for the life they have, that they may be pulled out of the pit of mortal delusion and understand what it means to be a Christ. The Christ is a strong, dynamic figure, opposed to the world of men, the money changers, and the people who themselves have not the dedication to seek the kingdom of God and to believe in God. For I tell you today that any number of individuals are nourished by their mortal doubts, and because of their doubts and lack of faith in God himself, even albeit they may seem to pursue a spiritual path, they have not placed themselves in the hands of their own mighty I Am presence and their divine identity to supply all of their needs, to take complete dominion and control of their being. And because they have not done so, they have suffered loss. I tell you, precious ones, these laws are workable. I tell you that these laws are immutable. And I tell you that it is only a lack of understanding on the part of mankind that have caused them to go forth and attack one another. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Thus, the answer to ignorance is spiritual knowledge. The answer to communism and materialism is spiritual knowledge. It is one answer, the golden age cup of ascended master light and love, and all must come in through that door. And unless they do, I tell you, precious ones, they will continue to wallow in the misery of psychic human creation in embodiment and out of embodiment, for there is no power in the universe that can violate the covenants of God. And I think then, for many, the second death was merciful. Yet, certainly, mankind recognized with all of the energy that they have given, all of the dedication that they have given to a noble cause, or to some noble cause through the centuries, ought to bear fruit, and therefore Kuan Yin has continued to plead again and again to save individuals, and I refer now to past ages, from the second death, so that they might, even when found to contain only one spark of regenerate truth, have that noble truth, the foundation stone for another opportunity, life after life, in the great mercy of God. When it is considered how that the mind of God is, when it is considered how that the mind of man is, then I say, if you were to look at the great gulf of perdition, which is fashioned between them, you would see the crying need to anchor yourself to any cable car that passes over that chasm and remain in that cable car until you have entered the safety of the divine idea and have fled the terrible insecurity of mortal thought and feeling with all of its bane. I hope then today to secure to all of you at this heart center the inviolate strength for the time to come that shall serve you well and nobly until this task be completed. How can we, in the name of God, find it possible to complete our task here without absolute harmony of purpose be the forte of all? How can this messenger or his beloved one be able to have any full measure of security in marching forth to carry the divine ideal unless every individual at the heart center is able to resist every form of psychic attack or subtle suggestion, and there are many, which is made against them or against our purposes, and they are the same. Precious one, do you not realize that the very fury of the attack should warn you as to the integrity of this organization? If you will look back upon the record and realize the very small, the tiny, almost nebulous beginning of this activity, and see how that it has struggled with few friends of wealth, with few friends in the outer world of note, if any, to reach its present state in the world of affairs, if you will take into cognizance the tremendous strength, the immortality of the cosmic beings that have spoken fiat through this activity, if you will take into account the number of organizations and individuals who have circulated rumor, lies, misconstructions, and gossip against our beloved messengers, you will know once and for all that so did they also to the prophets of old and to the holy Christed individuals who went forward. It may be true, precious ones, that there is a lesser measure of perfection manifest at times in the lives of those who are here, but this is for a purpose. For if, as in times past, we were to take only those individuals who were absolutely anchored upon the borders of perfection, not yet attained, and use them, it was not always a complete picture to mankind who felt that they were so far from the gate that the measure of the individuals that we used and their life did not impress the individual as it could and would otherwise. Therefore today we have chosen to take individuals of great spiritual aspiration and of old accomplishments, not always manifest to mankind, and bring them here at times in a manifest state of perfection blended with some imperfection, and little by little raise them up. Let individuals sneer then who will. They shall reap their own reward. And as has been said, I will bring them to thy feet, that they may know how I have loved thee. Therefore there is none who have stood with our messengers and with the light who shall ultimately not find the joy that will come to them as they see that truth is its own best defense. I take my leave of you now, for though I were to speak the day out and to explain at the greatest length, your human mind would not be able to retain the full grasp and scope of that which we would bring. But the little that I have brought, which I say is little to that which I could bring, and the weight of proof of our purposes must be in the thrust of light into your own feeling world, must be in your own future intent to make right all error which you have done, to accept and to understand that destiny is wrought by men of destiny, to understand that unless you can draw from the heart of God the image of your own destiny and accept it, it becomes a meaningless bell tolling out an unknown hour, and you return to the scum and offscouring of mortality. But if you can hold some response to our word, can recognize the need to be a devotee of the Masters in reality, and not expect the glamour of the human type to manifest, I think there is hope that you will see in a simple thing the hand of Christ, the hand of God, and all that he has wrought. If not, I flatter not myself to think that I could give it thee. For only by thy own thrust for a purpose, only by thy own recognition of God's luster, of his glory, canst thou truly apprehend that part of life which is God's gift to thee. I thank you for your attention, and I send you forth into the heart of God. May you be successful in your journey, and may the purposes of the Master be ever fulfilled in this focus of the summit, where Moria and Saint Germain abide, and where all of the hosts of heaven dwell, not in the outer circumstance or in the outer mortal thought, but in the internal radiance from which stems the flower of your spiritual identity. I thank you.
gracious ones, this is God's day. This is the day of the miracle of perfection. This is the day when the golden tablets of the law, expounded to man by his holy Christ's self, shall live in faith and action. This is the day of the miracle of perfection. Mankind have long waited for the manifestation of the miracle, yet day after day, with the uttering of divine speech, the miracle has gone forth, and men knew it not. In mankind there is, precious ones, an abundance of the mystical. Thus men are attracted to those conditions which seem at first to be but a curious aspect of the mind. Men yearn to probe beneath the surface of life and to find some dominant power that will release them from responsibility and the need to themselves act. Fortunately, the admonishment has gone forth that the Lord is the doer, and many have understood how that this is so. Yet, the element of responsibility which the great law has vested in mankind is such that man must become always a co-operator with God, and, in your own words, hitch his faith to a star. You see, precious ones, it is not enough for mankind to believe and have faith in God, and then to recognize that it is God who acts in their world to produce perfection. They bear the responsibility for removing the cobwebs from the altar of God and from the holy energies of life with which they are vested, the authority and rod of power by which they assert the dominance of the power of God in manifest life. You see, precious ones, mankind await the miracle of perfection as an automatic happening of their life stream, as a circumstance brought about through the fortuitous action of the mere rubbing of the lamp of life, that the flame of illumination would appear automatically and with great ease to their own life stream. They do not seem always to recognize the need for them to channel into the chalice of being those holy and regenerate energies which will produce the perfection of life, even as the screen of the mind is polished and burnished to the shining by an action of the sacred golden tomes of the law. When mankind read with their attention the ascended Master's words, they find that the mind will shine with the law of the Lord and the law of love. But when, in addition to attention, mankind also tie this worded instruction to the law of action, there is a fulfillment of the word that has gone forth, and then it does not return void unto the Creator thereof. When mankind become mere receivers and not givers, they receive the action of the great life ray which goes forth into the mind and heart and being of man, and that life ray stops right there. Through the power of misqualification, mankind take the holy energies of that ray and use them upon their outer self, being uplifted thereby for a moment, but receiving no eternal reward unless that which is posited within them is utilized for the freeing of man, that on the return current thereof God, the law, word, love, is glorified in the similitude of his being. Thus mankind become God in action. Knowledge is power, precious ones, it is true, and mankind have often said that knowledge is power. But knowledge is not always understanding, and therefore the power of that knowledge is not released by the mere retention of the words themselves, as many have found out, but by the understanding of the words, that man then become God in action by right appropriation of the holy energies of his presence. At a recent Grand Teton Conference, this very year, we discussed how that the word was often bandied about by mankind, quoted and discussed, and often used in support of some individual's own actions, which is a very subtle quality indeed, if it can be called a quality. For mankind sometimes feel the need to draw upon the holy words of life and reference them to another, overlooking a portion of the word and law to themselves which would naturally have prevented the action of criticism. Precious ones, human criticism is a most subtle quality. We have often discussed its action among mankind, and we have often admonished the students to refrain from it, but to the very present hour they continue to express those banal aspects of the use of their energy, which are sometimes so subtle that they are not even aware that it is taking place. You see then, precious ones, how that mankind will frequently come into a place where we are giving our addresses and releases. They hunger and they thirst after righteousness, yes, but they also hunger and thirst after a qualified brand of righteousness which they have in advance classified as the miracle of the presence of God. They are not, however, willing to accept the miracle of the flowers. They are not willing to accept the miracles of nature and all that they witness with their eyes and that they handle with their hands. Neither are they willing to accept the miracles of spiritual attainment, but seem to feel, and this is a myth, that there is some great glory attached to God, which would be, precious ones, a gilding of the lily of the divine identity. And this is simply because, precious ones, an individual cannot know more of God than that which he himself has. In other words, precious ones, until men shall grow tall in the consciousness of God, they cannot understand the measure of the law of the Lord himself as it expands, and his holy word, released in ever-expanding proportions, would not be rational to them unless they were able themselves to have expanded into that divine rationale. You see then, precious ones, that there is an underlying cause behind every action, and we, therefore, when we release our words and instruction designed to assist every individual upon the planet, must slant our instruction to mankind for their release and freedom from all mortal turmoil into the great unfailing law of love that will lift them on wings of light to that measure of attainment which we hold and which we expand in. You see, precious ones, a certain stultification occurs within mankind whereby there are dead centers, as it were. And when mankind come to a point where the law has turned to one of these dead centers, the momentum which mankind have generated is simply not enough to get them going again and therefore they fall back upon old momentums of human thought and feeling, and the sinister energies that lie in wait to grasp them and to rob them of their peace rush in because of the vacuum which they have created by simply not keeping their mind filled with the wonder of the kingdom of God and His great effulgence, which is swirling all around mankind and the universe by the power of divine love and holy wisdom. I ask you, precious ones, is this the fault of the divinity? Is this the fault of the ascended masters? Is this the fault of your brethren who also pray for you and yearn for you to expand in His law of love and light? I think that the holy truth will itself make it apparent to you that this is an individualized matter, and that individuals who find themselves in a condition that is less than the great buoyancy of the law will see the need indicated to them by their having entered this state for them to rise out of it by pulling themselves up literally through their own hands upon their own bootstraps. Now I know that mankind have often said to one another that you cannot lift yourself by your own bootstraps. Well, precious ones, perhaps this cannot be accomplished by outer mankind in an ordinary sense, but I am certain that the very God flame within mankind is capable of raising them either by the shoulders or by their bootstraps, as the case may be. For levitation is not a thing unheard of by the Most High, and He possesses the greatest levitating power in the universe, the power which keeps the worlds themselves turning in their orbits so that all life is sustained in proper balance to the solar fires. You see then, precious ones, the holy wheel of the law must continue to turn, and when mankind enter those areas of their life, those particular periods in their life, or their development, or evolution, as the case may be, as you choose to call it, where there seems to be a bogging down action, you must recognize that not necessarily one factor, but many, can conspire, and they are often attracted by one another. For just as the holy buoyancy of the law raises you up into light and peace and glory, so that you feel the great radiance of the law of God pouring forth to you, so the powers of negation do themselves rush in wherever there is a like manifestation. You see then that you must wholly expect that this action will occur, and be on guard that you may prevent it, not provide stimulation for it by remorse which does not effect some change in thought. You see, precious ones, when mankind feel remorse of any kind for any act whatsoever, it is never an act of God unless it be for the conscience that is within them, so that the conscience that is within mankind may provide stimulation for the return of the individual to a course of right action. There are two types of condemnation, two types of remorse distinctly. One is the type of remorse which is the former, and the other is the latter. And in the former case, mankind will be pulled down by that feeling of remorse and regret, and they will feel that they cannot rise out of it. Whereas in the latter case, they will recognize that only God and His law can act, and that this remorse is merely the prick, as it were, of the rider upon the horse, intended to spur him to greater movement forward, to greater compassion for the law, to greater understanding. You see, precious ones, there is never a struggle when the great law is given full command within the life stream. But the struggle occurs when there are certain human qualities that are acting, which counter the divine, and because of the opposite poles there is naturally a reaction in any life stream whatsoever. This is simply an action of the law, most impersonal to be sure, but very effective in deterring right action if individuals will submit to it. Now I think that it must be recognized by all that holy energies can be invoked and sustained within the chalice of being, and that it is holy energies that will give mankind his victory. Therefore I yearn today to take you in my arms. I yearn today to encompass you round about with the light which I bear. I yearn today to raise you up into cosmic dimensions. I would see the great power of the law flood forth into your mind, so that never again would you want succor at the moment of distress. But, precious ones, I know full well that the great reservoir of each individual being must be filled by the attention of that one upon the presence, and it can never come about through any other action. When the attention is upon mortality and destruction, when the attention is innocently enough in league or coupled with downward energies, it cannot be that the rays of light can come forth into that one's heart and chalice being. You see, precious ones, you must weigh carefully just what is acting in your own world. You cannot expect that others in the world shall do this for you. And when you are alone, as it is, and apart from others among mankind, and you are actually taking the measure of yourself, as some are wont to do, you must know full well that when human action has occurred in your life stream, that this must not be attributed to another, even although it may seem to you that some other individual is at fault. For the great law of karma that functions especially in spiritual endeavors is such as to cause many situations to develop which come forth purely for the righting of old wrongs and for the upliftment and instruction of mankind. Unless the law, then, shall be adhered to in all of its great purity by all shall not reap the full benefit of reward. There is then an individual action of returning karma which falls upon each individual for specific redemption, and there is a group action of karma whereby when a certain group do fail to fulfill their destiny, there is a joint responsibility for the unaccomplished pledged efforts. Precious ones, in our discussion then in the Grand Teton this very year, we discoursed as to how we might further thwart the purposes of evil, and how we might further expand the glorious opportunity of all mankind to accept your beloved Saint Germain's great service on behalf of freedom. We know full well, as this messenger has pointed out, that there are myriad forces among mankind, all of the same ilk, which desire to keep mankind from receiving the benefits of their freedom and grace. The sinister force does not want you, precious ones, to have your freedom. The powers of darkness wishes to keep you bound, and all mankind with you. This, after all, precious ones, is the only means they have to survival for themselves. For when all mankind have accepted the great light of God, and they are thrust clear of them, I ask you, where shall they stand to draw energy for? They can draw no energy then from God, for evil is quite naturally cut off from the Most High. And because none of the student body or any among mankind will give them energy, they cannot draw it from them either. And therefore the end of evil is actually spelled out, and the death knell of evil is rung out by a repeal of human authority and the great peal of the law as it rings forth by bells of freedom to all mankind to accept the divine constitution and the great divine liberty bell and the great cosmic law for the earth. This law is that which the great divine director is the authority for. and by drawing from his heart the great rays of light, which are your freedom, you shall merge your identity with he who is called the great divine director, and receive the fullness of his assistance in finding your own freedom and fulfilling the divine hierarchical plan. It can never be otherwise, for it must always be by plan and by execution of plan. The plans of men often go awry, and I think in cosmic honesty we must acknowledge that the plans of God are thwarted by men from day to day. But I wish to point out that they are not thwarted universally, but only in manifestation among mankind. Therefore, mankind suffer from an absence of the Lord's presence in their endeavors, and this is indeed an abomination of desolation, which was spoken of by Daniel the prophet, where there stood in the holy place, where it ought not, in time and space, and in the being of man, those conditions which are indeed absent from divine grace and divine law. You see then, precious ones, that when mankind fulfill the purposes of their being, they are present with God always, whether waking or sleeping. And this is an important point, for some have mused as to how they do accomplish divine purposes while their body itself sleeps at night. They have also mused as to their personal survival after the passing of mankind from the screen of life. Well, I tell you, precious ones, that the quick and the dead contain some element of this understanding. And if mankind would muse upon those words, the quick and the dead, they would come to realize that there is a quickening within their consciousness, which is the great flame of holy illumination from the heart of God, and it is also the flame of reality. When the Father then asks mankind to acknowledge the law by observance of the law, it is not a selfish action whereby he himself elects to receive allegiance from mankind, but it is an act of transference, whereby through obedience to the law, mankind themselves become armored with and merged into the flame of the law, which is the flame of the Ark of the Covenant. For this is the covenant which God made with man in the beginning, the mighty covenant of the law of life and the law of love, which is synonymous with life and God. Therefore it is the law of God, and the 10 Commandments simply amplify to mankind certain aspects of that law according to the tenfold flame of initiation, which does proscribe right action from one man unto another and from man unto God. So then, know this day that through acceptance of the pressure of the law of God, the law of love, the law of the Christ, and the way of peace, thou art breaking down mortal concepts and establishing immortal ones. Thou art thus entering into that personal survival which mankind long for. Without this, without these qualities of the law, man simply would exist and abide in darkness. For it is the law which is God that is light, and the darkness is the ungrund or the uncreated, that which has not yet been qualified with light. Therefore, when mankind through yogic experience or trance enter into a state where they feel consciously the presence of God, it quite naturally fills their mind with happiness. But unless there is some structure of the works of the law carried out in the giving of the cup of cold water in the name of Christ, unless there is some unfoldment of an understanding of the varied manifestations of God, the law itself would be in vain for the individual, although it would never be in vain for the universal. I hope then that you will understand how by the acceptance of the holy strands of light from God, which are the law, you are weaving a garment of your own reality, and your own survival, whether in the dream state, as when you sleep at night, whereby you can go forth and accomplish mighty works with the ascended masters, or whether it be through the passage of the veil of shadow, entering in to a state where men pass through when they lose their body form previous to the ascension, as many of you have done in past lives. You see, precious ones, the survival of the individual depends a great deal on their activity in the law of God, for many have waited from the time of Noah unto the present hour to receive re-embodiment because of the grossness and density of their nature. For the law simply could not qualify them to come forth until such a time as others with greater light had been given some opportunity to achieve their freedom. However, you are probably aware of the fact that your own beloved Jesus did himself enter into those astral levels where these individuals were sleeping, and quickened them and brought them forth so that they might find their freedom from the prison house of the hereafter. However, this is not the goal of God for thee. The goal of God for thee is the ascension in the light, whereby thy consciousness is merged into the Father's consciousness. In order to attain this, I think thou must recognize that the holy strands of thy energies must rise up and pulsate in consonance with the Father's spirit of harmonium, so that thou wilt not then be destroyed by that merge, but rather will be glorified by it. I hope you understand exactly what I mean, and to make sure that you do, I shall expound just a bit further. You see, precious ones, if you were to take negation and those qualities of negation as the preponderant part of a man and exalt it up to the Godhead, this would then in a flash of flame be consumed on the instant. And if mankind were more of that and less of light, I ask you, how would his consciousness be maintained? So you see, precious ones, when man is more light and less density, the density, as in the case of David Lloyd, could be consumed on the instant, and all of the human qualities as dross drop away without the suffering of the loss of his consciousness. And thus man could and does, when ascending as God intends, enter into the fullness of the Father's heart and being, to become for all time an ascended master, the master of his energies, consciously paying allegiance to the Godhead and acknowledging the mighty name of God, I am, the name of being. When mankind do not, you see, it would be a great misfortune, and therefore the law would see to it that they would return through the process of re-embodiment to the screen of life, to once again pick up the tangled threads of karma, that the skeins unraveled and attached where they ought to be would produce some measure of release through the process which the great yogis and rishis of India call karma yoga, but from which we would deliver all man, so that mankind might find the way, as epitomized by your beloved Jesus and others of the ascended masters, by your beloved Saint Germain, and by the great hosts and legions of freedom, the legions of light that surround me now. Holy wisdom, precious ones, is holy wisdom. It is the source of your freedom as you claim it, not as a sword to wield that cuts down into the human level to deflect mankind from God, to dissect mankind, to analyze mankind, but as the great two-edged sword of the law, which also swings both to right and to left, to see that thou art aware that the edge of that sword applies also to thyself, and that thou, each and every one of thee, must recognize the need to apply the law not only unto others, but also unto thyself. Thus shall all go free, and together clasping hands to hands, clasp heart to heart, and to the heart of God, and thus the meaning of wisdom and illumination shall be translated and translating, a reality that transcends mortal thought and feeling, a reality that causes mankind to indulge not in double dealing, but in freedom's flame, which is the flame of life, on which this activity is founded. And I pray that that flame may expand in this activity until the holy knowledge which you shall impart to mankind shall be a means of their freedom, as it is a means of your freedom. I thank you for your attention. I think also that this day shall be a greater day for thee, because thou hast heard my words, for they represent the words of our council, the desire to expand the need for truth to mankind. For many have been surfeited at times by truth because they have not applied it. They have been surfeited by truth because it has seemed similar to them, and so it is. But the application of truth is the cutter of the veil, and as mankind apply the truth, one veil falls from before their eyes. The scales fall from before their eyes, and justice is done. Then another veil is severed, and another, and so mankind penetrate the seven veils of knowledge leading to their illumination. And thus, I think then, men could understand the meaning, the esoteric meaning of the dance of the seven veils, the dance of freedom, when the emancipated soul enters into the holy place and is truly in the presence of God, truly in the presence of truth, truly illumined and one with God and his law of immortal love. I thank you.